overview of what's happening.
James, what I want to do is I want to talk about this whole idea of the president and presidential responsibility and presidential oversight. There was an article that I had sent, that I had read, and it was talking about the whole idea of how this administration is being run. And it's actually written in a conservative magazine called The New Republic. Talked about an administration run by temporary workers. And I thought that was very interesting that they talked about that. But when you look at every key issue that's been going on that has affected our democracy, from the Mueller report to immigration to this new investigation dealing with this particular phone call with the Ukraine, all those people that are making those final decisions are people who are temporary appointed. And the problem I have with that is that it negates the oversight of Congress, because they can function within those roles for a certain period of time without the Congress having a chance to even review them and approve them.
Yeah. And it seems unconstitutional to have that as the norm, as opposed to as a temporary situation that is a result of transition into governing from election, say back in 2016. By now, Donald Trump should have, most, if not all, of his 3,000 plus employee positions, especially the most important ones, like his chief of staff, Mulvaney, is temporary. And this is, I think, symptomatic of Donald Trump's way of operating. Again, I don't take Donald Trump as a man. I don't respect him as a man. As a person, I don't respect him. He's not a good person. And he is committed to keeping everybody around him insecure. See, I look at Donald Trump and I'm like, how did your mother F you up like this? How did your father do this to you? Because you're the worst person in the world in terms of your decency. You have no decency. Cokie Roberts died this week. This fool decided to say she didn't like me. She wasn't too nice to me. When John McCain dies, this fool argues with John McCain's dead memory for a week. Who does that? Who do you know in your whole life who's ever sat around hating on somebody who died? And then twice, the president in public? It'd be interesting if we found out 40 years from now that he hated Cokie Roberts or John McCain, like most presidents. But this man has no filter. And so when you talk about, just what he's doing, it's an attempt to keep people insecure. And he keeps people insecure, but he also, in his warped thinking, realizes, it minimizes the oversight. And I'm glad you bring this point out, because I hadn't thought about it. It minimizes the oversight liaison dynamic between the agencies in Washington and Congress that has oversight. Congress is the boss. Congress is in charge of America, not the president. Not the president. The president of the United States is an agent or a creature of Congress. When you read the Constitution, it does not say the president of the United States is the most important office in the presidency. Nowhere does it even suggest that. In fact, the Constitution, after the preamble, opens up with the first word is Congress. Congress shall make no law. It doesn't say president shall make no law. The Congress created the courts. Congress created the Attorney General's office. Congress created the federal. Congress created the appellate courts. Congress created everything except the presidency and the Supreme Court. Those are created by the Constitution. But Congress basically has the power to create everything else. So anyone that thinks the president is above Congress or the president is a peer of Congress doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Nowhere in the Constitution is the president the equal of Congress. Even as a separate power, Congress still is the boss of the president. And that's what people need to understand. The president is, political science teaches this. The president is a clerk. That's what political science teaches about the presidency. Google it. the president of the United States is not the leader of the free world like they keep saying. If you look at what presidential scholars like Clinton Rossiter, Arthur Schlesinger, and a few others that that can come to mind, Barber and others have come up with is the idea is, when you really think about what the president is, he is a clerk, and his job is to persuade 100 equals in the Senate, 100 of his equals. The Senate is basically 100 presidents or 100 people equal to the president. And that's why I was talking about Mitch McConnell really failing and exposing the weakness of the structure that the framers gave, because the Senate is supposed to be 100 people who are the peers of the president, not the 435 in the lower house, but the 100 in the upper house, which is the Senate. They are the president's equals. His power, let me say this real quickly and I'll shut up. His power, according to the same scholarship that calls a president a clerk, they say the president's only real power is the power to persuade other members of Congress that his policy positions are in their best interest.
Now the point that you made, I find excellent, because even before this particular article was written, that I've had conversations with you about this whole issue, this whole temporary presidency, this philosophy using temporary people. Now, the Federal Vacancy Reform Act of 1998 gives the president a certain amount of leeway to install other top federal officials into posts on a temporary basis. In theory, the president would use presidents have used this particular thing, law to fill gaps in leadership, while the Senate considers a permanent replacement. Now, this is the question I want to ask you, James. Why would you, with you having the Senate under control, why is he not appointing somebody permanent? And I think you already answered the question: to maintain control.
I think, again, Donald Trump has this warped view of leadership, warped view of governing, a warped view of building a team around him of competent people. He seems secure in having basically the mediocre racists around him, and
well, if he's so secure, why is he?
Stephen Miller is permanent.
Okay.
The people he has insecure are
Roy
people
Cohen?
that he effectively wants to be the only person, like his press secretary. Think about the woman that he's recently appointed to replace Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She has not held one press conference. Now you go back to the Clinton, the Bush, the Obama administrations, and remember how frequently the press secretary, almost daily, would be on TV talking to the American public about whatever, like the issue going on right now with the Ukraine. They'd have no one from the White House communications explaining this to America. Their attitude is, we don't need to talk to America. White America is on our side. As long as we keep this mess going on, we can just do what we want to do, because